Hi, it's Helen Godden here, all the way from Australia, and I am the Handi Quilter Sweet 16 Ambassador, and this is a segment we like to call Short and Sweet. Today I'm going to look at some grid designs, where we actually draw a grid on our fabric and work to it with our quilting. But of course you can use checked fabric as a grid, or your piecing. You've already got your little squares and your little corners to work to, so these designs will work equally into a grid system with your piecing. So let's have a look first at one I call Cathedral Windows, and it is based on a grid here, and I've drawn about a 1-inch grid for us to work with. And we're going to use this grid and bounce from one intersection to the next. So you can see I bounced down one side, just a fairly shallow little bump, and then closing it off again. Travel across and coming back down. So I'm doing all one direction first, whether it be vertical or horizontal, just do them all in one direction first. You can see it's fairly important to do that half shape at the end, so really finish that off. So if that was a block, it really is finished right to the edges. What I love about this design is that when it's finished and you look at it, you start to see these circles appearing. And you think, how clever to stitch all those circles, but we didn't stitch circles. It was actually one continuous stitch line that created that path. I'm going to show you another design that uses a grid. And this one is called Jigsaw Puzzle, and I've got the same about 1-inch grid drawn up on there. So as you can see, I've decided to do my verticals first. It doesn't matter if you do verticals or horizontal, but just do all one direction first. And as I'm coming down in my grid, in between each intersection, I'm adding that little knob of the jigsaw puzzle. Now sometimes that could be big or small. You'll end up getting quite consistent, and it doesn't matter if it's left or right. Just put a little knob on that jigsaw puzzle piece in every intersection. On the outside edges, of course, the jigsaw puzzle is always flat on those edges, so we're not going to put the little knob on the outer edges. So there you go. Every single piece fits together, and guess what? You'll never lose a piece. It always works. Bit of fun there. Now, what about, I always ask myself the what if questions. What if we didn't have a perfectly straight grid? What if we had a wonky grid? Okay, what if we had a grid that was all wavy and not just flat and regular, but had more movement to it, more expression to it? Would the pattern still work? Let's have a look. So I've got my wonky grid here. You could use a wave ruler if you wanted to, but otherwise I'll just draw that on freehand. And what I'll often do in my art quilts is find an area where this kind of wonky grid can really describe the surface of something. So you imagine if this was, say, the shape of a vase or the fat belly of a penguin or something, you could use this wonky grid to help describe that rounded surface rather than just a flat grid which just looks two-dimensional. This gives us a lot more movement and flow in a shape. So let's look at an example of where I've used a wonky grid in one of my art quilts. So this piece here, I'm trying to describe the fat shape of that vase or that jug. So I've done my grid in line work on that jug, emphasising the roundness of it. So it now looks really quite bellowy and fat compared to it being a flat design. So I'm really using that grid to help give a third dimension to my quilting rather than it just being flat and filling that area. I definitely have drawn that grid on with my marker first, my marker that irons away, because there's no way I could complete that pattern without that pre-drawn grid on there. So use that marker as a helping hand whenever you need to. So just as before, I'm just following the same format of going to each intersection of that grid, but we're starting to get that lovely movement happening through there. So the pattern is still working, but it's on that wavy, wonky grid. I love it. I find it more interesting to actually work rather than a straight grid as well. I enjoy seeing those patterns come to life. I really like it. I'm going to show you the jigsaw puzzle one now. And there you go. So what I do recommend with the wonky jigsaw puzzle in particular, that you don't have these shapes or the grid bigger than about an inch. It does start to lose its impact visually. These here are almost 2 inches square and I think it's starting to lose it. as the pattern is losing the impact. So if you were to make your grid even smaller, that would be really fun to have quite a micro jigsaw puzzle design. That would be really fun. What other grid designs do you have that you could work with? So we've done cathedral windows and jigsaw puzzles. I'm sure you've got some other grid designs that you could try in a wonky, wavy grid. Give it a try, see how you go. Thanks very much. I'll see you very soon.